What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we're going to go over a bit of a patent from Activision that kind of caught my attention, I think several other people, because they're going to be using information from players, stuff that they've gathered from you or anyone else who's been playing their games, and they're looking to actually turn that into an NPC with characteristics much closer to what a real person would have in-game. It's kind of interesting, a little scary for some, but could also solve an issue that we've seen with some games that just go stale and loses population online over time. Also going to talk about an interesting milestone from Nintendo that's big for them considering what they had before, which was the Wii U, and then we had some layoffs hit Sony at a time when we're hearing all about the PlayStation 5 and some possible internal strife going on with Sean Layden leaving. As always, guys, do these videos, make sure to hit the like button, it does help out, and get subscribed so you can stay up to date on all of the gaming news going on in the gaming world with a little bell checked and everything. Otherwise, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, weekday mornings, we're here with all of the gaming news, and we're actually going to start with a slight correction. Yesterday, I talked about the Ponyta, the Galarian form, of course, and I wanted to talk quickly about that because that is a Shield exclusive. The Sword exclusive is Surfetch'd. It's the evolution for Farfetch'd that we had introduced previously before this Galarian form for Ponyta. So right now we have those two as exclusives, just to get the record straight and everything. Also, a bit more information about the PlayStation 5 as we're slowly rolling into what I assume is going to be, like I said, a big event in February. Famitsu had information around the CPU, or I guess the APU, but the CPU specifically having 8 cores and 16 threads. That was something people weren't 100% on because currently, of course, the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One base has 8 cores with their Jaguar processor. This is going to have 8 cores for Ryzen, but 16 threads, which will, of course, help tremendously, probably in games and multitasking alongside of that. It is a big deal to step up to that, and then also an SSD, more RAM, larger bandwidth and everything. We're going to have some pretty capable machines, and I'm looking forward to what they can get out of it. But to have a CPU like that on board with a console, a closed box system, is going to open up some doors, we'll say, for these developers. Oh, and we, of course, know all about Apple Arcade going on right now. And if you have been around in the PC space for a while, this next story is going to be a little strange, I'll say. Consider Apple now selling Xbox One controllers, because that is what's happening. They are now selling them for $59.95 on their own website. You can go on there and pick one up, because of course you can sync it up and use it with Apple Arcade or just on Mac OS and everything. And it's funny to think about this because, of course, before we know, Apple and Microsoft didn't get along very well for a while there, and to a degree they kind of don't still, but they'll still work together. Of course, you can use Boot Camp and stuff to put Windows on your Mac if you would like to, and Office and everything's been made available and all. So it's not like they completely war like they did back in the day. It's just more funny to look at this as, again, someone who's been around in the PC space for so long, and to see Microsoft's product technically being sold physically, a physical controller on their store. Interesting stuff there, but yeah, you could pick it up if you want, and I guess you could sync it up and use it on iOS, Mac OS, or tvOS. Also, I want to bring up a game to you that's going to be hitting Kickstarter, I think, on the 24th, and it looks suspiciously close to another game you might know. Here's the trailer, and let me know what you think. Which game is this close to? Looks very, very, very close to Cuphead. This is called Enchanted Portals. It's a Kickstarter trailer they put out, and they are hoping to go live with their Kickstarter campaign October 24th. And I don't 100% know what kind of trouble they could get into for this. I don't think they'll get into trouble, but man, does it look close. It looks like very, very close, to the point where it is jarring, and I do wonder if there is any kind of case there for Studio MDHR. I don't think they did anything trademarked or anything, the art style, so I guess technically not, but I mean, it is like strikingly similar. The gameplay looks the same. The visuals and everything look very similar. Not as good, I would say, but very, very close. You'll have to let me know about this one, because I looked at this and I said, "Ooh, that's tough." And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start with this big Nintendo milestone that's taken place now. They did announce it on their Twitter, Nintendo Europe, and it appears that the Switch has now sold. This will be Switch and Switch Lite combined, because of course it is technically a family of systems now, has sold a combined 10 million units in all of Europe. Now, that is a lot, especially if you compare it to something like the Wii U, but it is lagging a bit behind some of the other territories, especially based on the size of Europe compared to something like Japan that is, 9.5 million, I believe, just about now in terms of sales, and the US hit that last December. This is according to Daniel Ahmed, who went over some more statistics when it comes to this. However, it is up 30% year over year for Europe, and that's pretty good. That basically means the Switch has continued to grow, and the Switch Lite will only help, obviously, when it comes to install size. It's a 40% increase compared to 2017, and Nintendo Everything also gathered up more stats beyond that, with 36 million Nintendo-published games sold in Europe so far. And I look at Europe as a region that Nintendo has struggled in. I mean, the 3DS did pretty well, but there really wasn't any other handheld it was going up against. I mean, once the Vita fell off, it was basically the 3DS by default. The 3DS pretty much moved up to attempting to compete with cell phones, and even those games are, they're free to play and everything, and everyone already has a phone anyway, so it's not as much. It's still a luxury item, but it's not like that extra luxury item. Like, people can go without a 3DS, but can they go without a cell phone? That's definitely become, I think, a necessity for a lot of people at this time. But now you have the Switch showing up and everything, and 10 million in Europe so far is good, but I think if they really want this generation, specifically the Switch, to be like that big generation, possibly selling more than the Wii, they have to figure out how to do explosive sales in Europe. That has kind of been their weak point in Europe, and if they can figure that out, I think they have something there. Now, we're gonna find out, of course, a lot more, I believe, later on at the end of this month, where they should update a lot of their sales numbers and install size figures and everything. Nintendo should, I believe, so we'll at least hear more about all of that, and maybe get some updated dates on when some future games. I keep looking at Bayonetta like, man, I hope they update that with something, but at this point, we'll probably have to wait till early next year to find out, hopefully, a release window for it. I kind of just want a confirmed year at this point, I guess 2020, but looking at Europe, yes, they have a lot of potential there, and the Switch Lite already showing up so early on at a $200 price point in the generation is a big deal. I'm curious if they'll work at all to get it even lower down to what the 2D, I mean, the 2DS is $80 now, sometimes $60 if you find it in the right spots on sale. So the moment they can get the Switch down to like $150 or less in some capacity, I think it's going to be even easier for them. But like I said, we'll see towards the end of this month where they are. But for now, anyway, 10 million in Europe, more in the US by probably quite a bit at this point, and Japan now is catching up. Japan is rolling, by the way. They are flying in Japan. So Japan should pass Europe, despite Japan being smaller. So we'll see about all that, though, later on this month. Next up, let's talk about this really cool remote play feature that appears to be heading to Steam in beta pretty soon, and I like the idea of this. It's something that I guess we've experienced kind of recently with Nintendo, with their Super Nintendo games and the Nintendo games, where they made it so technically the games were designed to be like offline co-op style games, but now they are also being played online. However, it looks like Steam is going to go back and get games that have not been able to be played online, they're only like local games, and allow you to play online with them, which is a great idea. It's basically a remote play is what they're calling it. And what's interesting about this is it technically hasn't been made public yet. It was sent out to developers who, of course, signed up for mailing lists and are basically updating games and stuff on Steam. And they got this massive update that they shared online. And this was on a forum that they posted this on. Specifically, I saw it on a Unity forum post, and basically the idea comes down to 2 or more players to enjoy local multiplayer games over the internet together, and this will support all local multiplayer, local co-op, and split screen games. These will all be automatically included in the remote play together beta, which they plan to launch the week of October 21st, so it's soon. It's in less than 2 weeks. This should go live. It appears like it's going to be almost like a button you press, and then I guess at that point you pick someone on your friends list, you guys have the same game, and somehow I guess an extension will allow it to launch into a multiplayer game that tricks the game into thinking it's playing locally, but really it's online. I like this idea, especially since it sounds like it's going to work with all of these games going backwards. Like, that's great. Backwards compatible with games that were not thought to be online, but now will be. Very, very interesting stuff. It also shows just how far ahead, by the way, Steam is over something like the Epic Game Store, right? I mean, this is a cool feature, and I'll be interested to try it out, and I guess just look for a button of some kind, I guess, to pop up in a week or two, and it'll be interesting to try it out and see how it actually functions across games that were not meant to be played online, but now can be, I guess, with people from your friends list. Next up, let's talk about Sony and some layoffs that appear to have hit them. So we talked about the PlayStation 5, of course, the information from the Wired article, and that really hit headlines and it was all over the place, and we were pretty much focusing on that. But while that was happening, Sony was also putting out news about layoffs. And yeah, I mean, it's an easy way, I guess, a lot of people would say, to kind of work your way through the PR maze, if you will, and basically say, hey, look over there. We're going to put this out now and lay some people off and tell you guys about it. So that way, if you ever ask, hey, we told you guys. Yeah, it was same day as the PS5 stuff, but we did tell you. So the layoffs are actually happening in PlayStation Europe and some in the US as well. GameIndustry.biz kind of rounded this up alongside of their sister site, Video Games Chronicles, that did report that it's affecting divisions which include marketing and PR, and then there are some in the US creative services team. There was even one actually on Twitter that said and kind of explained what was happening, and it's really interesting because then here comes Aaron Greenberg offering job positions. So, hey, you guys can sign up here if you don't mind coming to Seattle. We have some positions that we think you could fill. And here's the thing about this. Looking at the situation with layoffs, it kind of makes sense with them doing this big restructuring behind the scenes that we keep hearing about, but we, of course, can't see, and Sony doesn't really tell us. That's something they're going to keep behind closed doors. And after seeing Sean Layden leaving in what's not even been really made that official, it's a tweet so far. It's like one tweet. That's the only reason we know that Sean Layden had left. If they didn't say anything, we wouldn't even know. And then we would find about layoffs and be like, oh, interesting. They're doing some layoffs. This appears to be a shift towards the Sony Entertainment, I guess America would be the one that appears to be heading everything up, and they're trying to unify everything under one umbrella is what it sounds like is going on. So naturally they go back, and as they shift people around and move people here and there, there's probably redundancies when it comes to jobs, and they have to pretty much lay people off because they don't need, 3 people to do one job, basically. And that is unfortunate. I do like that Aaron Greenberg came in and said, hey, we got positions here. If you can move to Seattle, we can drop you in there. And hopefully everyone there is able to find positions in the video game space. Unfortunate, but I guess Sony really is serious about this restructuring going into the PlayStation 5. And I don't know if we'll see any results from this until the PS5 comes out, just to see what their attitude is towards games in, say, the JRPG sector, just as an example, or things outside of the typical games we're seeing that are really becoming popular for them now. Days Gone, Last of Us, God of War, just as some examples, right? We'll see what Sony looks like going into next generation with this mindset. And our last bit of news, let's talk a bit about Activision and a plan that they have currently to try to take your kind of characteristics, your profile, and try to work you into a computer character that you may face, or I should say someone else would face in a bot match. So, for example, you might play a game and you'll play against some computerized opponents. Well, what if they had characteristics that were based around a pro player and a high skill level? That could be interesting. Like, let's say you're playing, I don't know, let's just say Fortnite in general, right? And here comes a bot character that is heavily modeled around Ninja in terms of characteristics and skill level. That actually might be kind of interesting for people to try out, right? To see how they do in that capacity. But Activision is kind of pushing this right now with a patent. Yeah, that's right. You can see the patent here. And they seem to describe this, and this has been going on since 2014, where they've been developing this, the system and method for transparently styling non-player characters in a multiplayer video game. And this was published recently, but again, it dates back to 2014. And well, when you sign up for these games and you play and you have a profile set up, they already kind of know a lot of your information as it is, but let's say they want to take you, and while you're offline, your friends who are playing the game and they want to jump into an online match, oh, here he comes, it's him. No, wait, no, that's a computer character, and the character will act more like you based on apparently everything, your age, gender, geolocation even, that's interesting. Yeah, so they kind of pull all this information, throw it all together in machine learning, and spit out a computer character that I guess will do similar tactics that you have been doing in the past couple of matches and favoring different weapons or paths, I guess, on the map. It's a very interesting idea, but it does have some people concerned about the amount of information that will be gathered to make that happen. On the flip side, though, it would also fill out matches in games that really have a waning population. We'll say a game that's not as popular now, or maybe it's an older Call of Duty or something that not as many people are playing. Well, then they can fill it out with bots that are actually competent, and that would be kind of interesting. But do you want Activision collecting all that data and creating an AI character that will act like you? It's interesting stuff. You'll let me know about that one. And we'll finish up the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Jonathan Soko saying, I will never buy into Google Stadia. It is literally the epitome of where I don't want gaming to go. It's hard enough for me to buy digital games because I don't actually own the thing. This takes it to the next level. I hate it. I work hard for my money. It's nice to actually own something. And I think this has been the biggest mistake of Stadia so far, is that they did not develop a subscription service for games ahead of actually trying to launch this thing and then introduce a subscription service just to be a part of it. So, like, look at xCloud. xCloud isn't catching as much flack for all this because we figure it's going to be attached to Game Pass in some capacity. And of course, Microsoft's also developing a box. So if Google had shown up and they developed an entire local box, a console, and then they said, oh yeah, we also have Stadia, I don't think people would have cared as much about Google trying to change everything to streaming or introduce streaming because they would still have a local box. And they would also have a subscription service, I would assume, similar to Game Pass. I think that's the biggest thing. If you sign up for a subscription service like a Game Pass, you understand that games will move in and out. We understand when we do Netflix that we don't own any of the movies there. We don't have it on our shelves or anything or on our hard drives. So we get that. But with Stadia, you're still buying the game full price, $60 we assume at this point, right? And you technically don't own it at all. Like, it still feels like a subscription service without being a subscription service. That's the problem we have right now, and they need to figure that out. Unfortunately, it's not going to be before they launch, because that's in like a month. And ladies and gentlemen, go to here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about, whether it's Sony and the layoffs that have hit them. Do you think that PS5 information through Wired was released strategically so that they could kind of cover it up? And then what do you think about the restructuring they're doing? Because they seem to be laying off some people here, dozens and dozens, as we've heard, as they try to work behind the scenes to, I guess, streamline all this stuff. What about Activision with their new patent that's going to turn you to an NPC? And then I guess what about Nintendo's big milestone in Europe? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. Play some games, and I'll see you guys back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.